In this video here, I'm going to walk you through what project-based learning is and just give you the basics. I really wanted to give you guys just a little glimpse of what project-based learning is, hearing it from me before you go diving deeper into other articles and videos. So as you can see here are a couple pictures of my students from the past actually partaking in different project-based learning activities. This was my favorite one. This is where students were actually had the opportunity to map out a garden, and they were learning about area and perimeter. So in the summertime, towards May or June, their end goal was to actually create and design the garden on their own. They were measuring, they were doing math out there, and they were having a lot of fun. So I definitely I'll share more about this with you in a little bit, but I just wanted to give you guys a little glimpse. Okay, so what is project-based learning? Project-based learning is also known as PBL. So a lot of times we hear different buzzwords in education. So if you hear PBL, that's what project-based learning is. It's a teaching method that gives students the opportunity to create, investigate, and engage in authentic tasks in a given period of time. So for example, PBL is often very student-centered, meaning that the teacher is able to take a step back and really let the students work through different challenges and work collaboratively in groups. So it often relates to the real world. So for example, as you can see that I just discussed with my students in the past, they were creating a garden, and I discussed with them how would we use area and perimeter in real life, and that was just one of our examples was, if you had a new house and you wanted to find the space for a garden. Also, it demonstrates student mastery. So this would really help you, projects like these, to really help you to kind of get an idea of where students are at. So again, you're taking a break from that state assessment and you are really able to get a big picture of how students are thinking. Even if students are in small groups and you're able to just hear them work through those challenges, it gives you a really good idea of where students are at. So the benefits of project-based learning, as you can see here are more pictures from the past, and these are my students at Michigan Technical Academy Middle School in Redford, and students were actually they were actually participating in the Maker Movement, and students were creating 3D versions, shadow boxes of their of their chosen country that they had to research. And they had to create 3D models. So you can see over here, the student over here created a volcano, and he actually got to connect a Makey kit to that volcano, and he recorded his own voice. So when we had our big celebration night, students and parents were able to come around and just tap the volcano with their fingers, and they could hear the student's voice explaining about this famous volcano and why it's a huge tourist attraction. So again, benefits of project-based learning. It increases student motivation and engagement. It's giving students a break from that textbook, from that state assessment, from those worksheets, and just, reading or doing math problems out of a book. It gives them hands-on, it gets them excited to come to class, and you would be surprised how much more they actually learn through projects. It also promotes peer collaboration and communication skills. So again, this is really how you are creating your classroom. So for example, in the past, I have always kind of set up my room like a Starbucks, where I would have high tops and low tops, and it was kind of set up like a laid-back cafe where students could collaborate and work through challenges. Also, it promotes personalized learning. So again, you may have one group that is performing at a higher ability level than another group. So again, you can take that project and kind of differentiate it to cater the needs of all of your students. And again, like discussed before, it breaks away from the traditional teaching methods that, again, sometimes students think of as so boring. The challenges. Sometimes it's really hard for first-year teachers to design engaging projects aligned to content. And not even just first-year teachers like yourselves, but sometimes even teachers with a lot of experience. Sometimes it's difficult. Maybe there's a standard you're working on that you think, how can I apply this to the real world? But again, those are what creates those higher order level thinking questions. Technology integration. We always want to make sure that we are getting students to be college and career ready. And sometimes, how can I, thinking about how can I create technology into this lesson? How can I get students to create something authentic on their own? Maybe they're creating a PowerPoint. Maybe they're creating a brochure on Microsoft Word. So you can kind of use that to your discretion of what you feel that your students are ready for. But again, adding technology is highly engaging for students. You also want to make sure that you're creating very effective rubrics so students know exactly what they're going to be graded on, exactly what they need to accomplish. So they're taking ownership of their work. And when we're developing great rubrics, that really helps kind of fill in those gaps. And again, we want to make sure that we are providing ongoing feedback and effective assessments. So sometimes we always think of assessments as, an end of the unit test, but something even as a formative assessment. We are walking around the room and we are questioning students as they're working on their projects. You're observing. Things like that are still examples of assessments, and you want to make sure that you're continuing to do that, again, to kind of measure what students are taking in. So components of project-based learning. So PBL, and again, remember we abbreviate project-based learning. You really want to make sure that you have a driving question or a challenge. So again, this is sort of related to our essential questions in the classroom. So maybe, for example, you are working on a persuasive writing unit. And your driving question is, how can you persuade the mayor to fund the sports program in our schools? And, students are working towards a goal. Students need to know, and they also, you want to make sure that students have inquiry, so inquiry-based classroom, making sure you're teaching and promoting those questions and innovation. They're becoming entrepreneurs, they're creating. You want to make sure that students are really incorporating that you're using 21st century skills in all of your lessons. You want to promote student voice and choice, and I think that this is the biggest piece. You want to be able to give students choice. Maybe you have a very artistic student and they want to really kind of draw, and they're good at drawing, and that's how they can show you that they're taking in what you're teaching. Or maybe you have a student that is just really good with technology and they want to show you their mastery through technology. So you want to just be very intentional about giving students choice in their project creations. You always want to be giving feedback and revision like we just discussed about. And you really want to just make sure that you are taking the majority of these of these elements in project-based learning, and you really want to make sure that you are really trying to incorporate all of them, because that really is what defines project-based learning. Finally, elements of project-based learning. This kind of gets into it a little bit more. And I did take this from the Buck Institute for Education. It's an awesome website. I really recommend that you take a look at this. But when we're talking about sustained inquiry, it's really important, I want to mention, that students engage in a very rigorous, extended process of asking questions, finding resource, and you're teaching them how to apply their new information. And you want to make sure that that end game is their public product that they're ready to share. They're examining, explaining, they're displaying, and presenting it to people beyond the classroom. So you really want to make sure you're celebrating their work as well. Time frame. Some of you may ask, how long do these projects have to be? It doesn't have to be. It's not a one-shot lesson. This could be days, weeks, or months. Some portions of PBL can even be completed at home, and students must be working through challenges and ultimately feel a sense of pride after completing the final product. So again, this is really up to your discretion. I've had projects that students have completed in a few days, or I've had projects that actually lasted 6 months. We actually did community outreaches. So some examples of project-based learning, and again, these photos are from my personal teaching experiences, and I did have all parental permission for these photos to use for this purpose. This is an example of students who were actually researching. We were working on a scientific unit, And I was teaching my students kind of what inquiry is and creating questions, and students were able to actually go outside and explore different, things in nature, animals, trees, leaves, and we were working on a poetry unit. So I actually allowed students to kind of get outside and get a feel and make observations and jot down notes, and because we were really working towards the environment. So that was our big focus for poetry around Earth Day. So students had a lot of fun with this, and they knew what was expected of them. And here's just a few scenarios, examples of project-based learning that I thought would give you a very clear picture. Maybe your students in 3rd grade are working on a Michigan Social Studies unit. Maybe you will have students work collaboratively in pairs to create a 3D version of a famous monument in Michigan. In addition, they have to create a multimodal presentation to convince their audience to travel to the state of Michigan. Another example, maybe your 2nd graders are learning about area and perimeter in math. Students are required to use mathematical equations and create and plan a garden using graph paper. Furthermore, they actually get the opportunity to plant their garden collaboratively as a team. Maybe each group member plays a certain role in this process. So my biggest piece of advice when it comes to creating and developing projects in your classroom for your students, make sure you're thinking with the end goal in mind. So always remember and think about what we learned about backwards design planning. So remember, always start with what do you want your students to know by the end of this unit. Thank you.